You're watching the Reddit Ranger. This is r/DnDStories, where OP was just a stone's throw away from the perfect prank. Our next story is from Koicane. Bag of Holding rocks. In the late game stage of my group Storm King's Thunder campaign, no spoilers here, we all decided to spend a lot of gold we just got on bags of holding for everyone. I, as a half-orc barbarian, get an idea to play a prank on some of the others by loading their bags with rocks, so they'll have to spend time taking them out or unload them every time they want to put a new item in. So my barbarian loads her bag with rocks. She fails every single stealth check it would have taken to get the slip on the others, and resolves to do so another day. For the rest of the campaign, I would routinely forget that I needed to remove the 500 pounds of rocks from my inventory every time I needed to add something to it. I ended up taking a prank meant to be a one-off joke for the other people in my party, and turned it not just on my character, but on myself. This resulted in any time she put something in, she would leave a pile of rocks behind. To be fair, I never had more than a +0 for intelligence in that campaign.
How a slip of the tongue became one of my favorite D&D moments. So I was DMing a short little adventure for my friends. To set the scene, they were investigating a strange disturbance in the forest near a town they were passing through. Many of the trees in the forest had started turning pink and magical, and the animals were all becoming aggressive and agitated. After some investigation, trekking, and a few encounters, the party eventually found the source of the occurrence, and I began to describe it to them. In the center of the cave, floating above the floor, was a rock. The rock was weird and glowing and magical and effervescent. I didn't realize what I said. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just imagining this rock is made of Alka-Seltzer. I didn't realize what I had said and continued describing the rest of the cave, and most of the party recognized that I had just made a mistake and let me carry on. But our warlock spoke up. Maz, did you mean iridescent? What did I say? You said effervescent. Well, shoot, what does effervescent mean? It means bubbling, like champagne or something. It was a simple, if silly, mistake. Nothing to be embarrassed about, but after everyone was done laughing at my expense, the wheels in my head just started turning, and I now began to describe this effervescent rock. It was bubbling and morphing, and bubbles were floating off in all directions, and everywhere a bubble landed, a pink flower would grow. One of my party members would eventually pop a bubble with their hand after much warning from the rest of the group. They now have a magical wooden arm. I don't think there's a moral to this story, just that maybe you can have a more fun time by rolling with your mistakes instead of correcting them. Scorpius187 has this little nice contribution down in the comments. We still kid our DM about this one 3 years after it happened. You see a man wearing a cloak overneath his armor. Both of his heads are shaved. What he meant to say was, you see a man wearing a cloak over his armor, both sides of his head are shaved. But from then on, every time we encountered a cloaked figure, we had to find out if the cloak was overneath his armor, and if he had two shaved heads. That was a good one.
Magic items at level 2. Our characters entered a town, got to the magic shop, and asked for magic weapons. I, the bard, seduced the cashier, and we got a rapier that deals an extra 2d8 cold damage and armor that gives us immunity against thunder damage. We are at level 2. Your DM is going to have a field day with that one. Now we move on to the Masks of Destiny, Chapter 3, The Masks. You what? Carolus basically explodes. How could you lose the mask? His face is turning redder every second. A hand touches Carolus's shoulder and a voice says softly, "Allow these folks to retain their good temperament." There's a priestess standing there. He puts his head in his hands. "This is my granddaughter Elon, but you are still going to make up for this mistake. You are going to help me now." He raises his head and looks at us both in turn. "You are going to help me retrieve the masks." "The masks?" Kaylin asks as she orders a glass of water. "Yes, the masks. But first, I suppose I should tell you about them." He seems to calm down a bit. "There are 8 masks of power in total, one for each school of magic. Divination, illusion, evocation, necromancy, abjuration, conjuration, enchantment, and transmutation. He continues, each of these masks by themselves is not very powerful, but when all 8 are put together, catastrophe will strike across the world. How were they created? Kaelin asked Careless. The masks were created by a race of sorcerers called the Tang. They had begun to fear the most powerful one among them, Zeoth. A plan was devised to drain Zeoth's power so his conspirators would gain them. 8 masks were created. The masks. They were hidden away, never to see the light of day again. Nothing more is known about them except for that I know the general location where one is located. Careless finishes. Where? I asked, leaning in. I'm getting interested in this. I've narrowed down the search area to the eastern mountains, Careless explains. I will fund the trip, but will not travel with you. Head to the village of Kingsreach. There you will be able to ask the locals about the mask. So are we going to need warm clothes for this? Elon says to Kaelin and I. I've never experienced snow. What's it like, I wonder? Kaelin proceeds to tell me as we head off to our rooms. It's white and powdery, but cold, and it can also be solid. I get to my room and sharpen my sword, cleaning off any gunk from the manticores that's still on it. After I clean my sword, I go to bed. The next morning, there's a knock on the door. I reluctantly get up to go answer it after getting dressed. It's Elon. Shaskane, we should go to the market and buy some warm clothes for this journey. Grandpa has given me money for the gear, she tells me. Give me a half hour, I say as I close the door. About a half hour later, I leave my room and head down to the market. Elon gives me some coin to spend on clothes and other necessities. I end up buying warm clothes, 50 feet of rope, and a spyglass. Then I got back to the cavern and meet up with Elon and Kaelin. Everyone ready? I question them. Ready as I'll ever be, Kaelin responds with excitement. This is our first real adventure together. I'm ready too, Elon says. Let's go. Kaelin bursts out the door with tons of excitement. Elon and I follow her out the door and out of the town. We walk across the grassland for a while before we begin through a forest. It has truly begun. And now we move on to the Masks of Destiny, Chapter 4, Kingsreach. One evening, after about a month of traveling to Kingsreach, we are eating dinner in the forest. Holy crap, a month of travel? Jeez. We are eating cooked lamb chops with asparagus and some water. About halfway through the dinner, I hear a twig snap in the distance. My head snaps up and I taste the air. Kaelin apparently heard it too. As I taste the air, a rotten taste hits my tongue, and I bring it back in quickly, hating the taste. Orcs, I think. I put my food down and quickly go for my sword. Before I reach my sword, about a dozen orcs burst into our clearing, yelling a battle cry. I dive for my sword and shield while Kaelin grabs her staff. Elon is taken by surprise and is scrambling for her mace, which is a distance away. An orc swings his club at me and I block it with my shield, before retaliating with 2 quick stabs to the ribs, dropping him dead in moments. I look over at Kaelin and she is firing off spell after spell at the orcs. 2 go down from her spells when another orc tries unsuccessfully to jump onto my back and beat me with a club. I whirl around, my sword a blur through the air as I cleave the orc in 2. Elon finally grabs her mace and starts off by smacking an orc that was chasing her right in the face. The other orcs who didn't reach us yet see the carnage that we did to their comrades and flee in terror. Oh no you don't, I yell as I charge after them. You ruined my lamb chop! I put away my sword and shield and throw both of my hand axes at 2 fleeing orcs. One lands at the side of the tree while the other nails an orc in the back of its head. It drops to the forest floor dead. I recover my axes and glare at the other 6 fleeing orcs before heading back to the camp. Kaelin is standing there waiting for me while Elon is trying to clean off all the dirt that got on the food. Did you get them? Kaelin asks me. No, they got away. I did nail one in the head with my axe though, I respond, holding up the bloody axe. She just nods. We decide to move our camp somewhere else before resting in our tents for the night. The next morning we pack up and move on as usual. 1 month later we crest the top of a hill and see patches of snow forming in the grass. I look ahead and I can see in the not too far distance a small village, Kingsreach, and just beyond there are the foreboding mountains, the high ice as the locals call it. It is a great plateau with the great glacier beyond it. We begin down the other side of the hill towards the village and their warm fireplaces. That was r/D&D stories, and if you think my next character should wear his cloak overneath his armor, make sure to hit that like and subscribe.